welcome to a brand new episode of the Jampack Report today for August the 29th of 2020, the rare Saturday show. Of course, my name is Samuel Adams, and this is a daily gaming news podcast that is normally hosted Monday through Friday on YouTube and podcast services around the world. But this week we had a work conflict with our last show of the week, so here we are on Saturday putting in that extra work because a story broke that I just had to share my thoughts on. Ratchet Clank Rift Apart will offer 4K 30 FPS and 60 FPS resolution modes. That is according to a Famitsu interview featuring Marcus Smith and Mike Daly of Insomniac Games, as spotted by Nibble on Twitter. In the interview, Famitsu asked about the supported frame rates and resolutions for Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart, with Daly responding that the game will offer two separate modes for players to pick from to balance comfortable gameplay with beautiful graphics. Quote, one is 30 FPS at 4K resolution and the other is lower resolution at 60 FPS, the translation reads. Later in the same interview, the interpreter mentions that the Ratchet & Clank series ditched the 60 FPS benchmark set by the PS2 games in favor of 30 FPS and better graphics for PS3 and PS4 players, and with the PS5 release, it appears they are now giving players the choice between these two different styles yet again. Now, they mention at IGN that during Opening Night Live, Rift Apart was confirmed to be a launch window game for the PlayStation 5, and there was a large look at a chunk of gameplay from the upcoming title from Insomniac Games. So, this bothers me a tad, and I'll tell you why. Performance modes are something that I wanted to leave in the current generation, and for those that are not familiar with that idea, basically on PlayStation 4 Pro and on Xbox One X, you can often choose where you want the power of your console to be going primarily. So you can choose 4K 30 in some modes or 1080p 60. One example of this is God of War, came out in 2018. Beautiful game, whether you're playing at 4K 30 or 1080 60, but ultimately for somebody like myself, I would choose a higher frame rate over a higher resolution, especially depending on what monitor you are playing on, or TV. And so that's kind of the trend that we've seen a lot of developers take in the past few years. But going into the next generation, the marketing behind these consoles and the general assumption, I suppose, from the community is that there would be no way to hold your game back. You wouldn't have to choose the elements that you want. And to some degree, this article is good because you can choose and customize your experience in the same way that you could on a PC. At the same time, I feel like 4K 60 should be the baseline expectation for next generation, and we shouldn't have to choose to hold back specific elements of the game. Now, of course, the article itself mentions the Famitsu interview, and during that interview, the direct quote says that it is going to be 4K 30, and then you will be able to choose from a lower resolution at 60 FPS. So presumably that would be something like 1440p, aka 2K, or it could be 1080p. That's a bit unfortunate for me, and this is not just talking about PlayStation, and this is not talking about the team at Insomniac Games. I feel like this is foreshadowing both the Xbox Series X and the PlayStation 5. I feel like the marketing teams behind the scenes have built these consoles up to be more capable than they actually are. And this is the danger that you run into whenever the general public, the general gamer, starts to look to 4K 60 as the baseline and starts to look at these numbers that at the end of the day don't really signify the quality of a game, and they don't really signify the quality of an experience. Really, the games can speak for themselves, and a well-optimized game running at 4K 30 could be better than a poorly optimized game running at 4K 60. It just depends on how you break things down, and it depends on the developer and the game. There are so many little details. But at the same time, if you are going to be selling these $500 to $600 consoles, to still have to choose a performance mode that sacrifices a specific portion of the experience is something that really just rubs me the wrong way, and it makes me wonder if the next generation of consoles is worth jumping on board at the very beginning, or if it's worth waiting for a PlayStation 5 Pro and an Xbox Series X2, or whatever you want to call it, the in-between for the next console generation, some may call it. But again, I just wanted to point this out. Now, that is not to say anything negative about the Ratchet Clank Rift Apart gameplay. As far as the game itself goes, looks gorgeous. Really impressed with how everything is shaping up over there. And of course, these first parties are able to optimize at a way that third parties can, but often are unable to achieve. If you look at 2018 God of War, that game is phenomenal. Spider-Man, phenomenal. Horizon Zero Dawn, very well optimized. And then you see the issues that it ran into whenever Horizon Zero Dawn released on PC. It did not run as well as it did on PS4 Pro from time to time. And that's because, again, whenever you build a game around a specific system or a specific console or a specific architecture, it becomes much more tuned in. In a way, you can look at Halo 5 Guardians. That game is gorgeous. Although the story is not that great, the game is gorgeous, and it was running on a day one Xbox One when I played it. And that's something to behold. But regardless, as time goes on, the consoles tend to get better games because developers are able to leverage every little bit of the hardware, the more familiar they get with developing on the console. You look at that towards the beginning of the PlayStation 4 generation, a lot of those games just don't look great. If you really want to break it down to its core fundamentals, they're good, but if you compare something like Killzone Shadowfall to God of War or Spider-Man or Death Stranding or even Days Gone, if you really want to break it down, it just doesn't hold a candle to it. And I think that's probably going to be a similar situation with the PlayStation 5 and even the Xbox Series X. But to see this headline really just worried me because, again, these consoles are currently needing to justify their existence for a lot of people because the economy's not doing great. Currently, for a lot of people, millions of Americans are unemployed. People around the world are still grappling with the coronavirus pandemic. On top of that, the Xbox One X that I have right now, it's holding up pretty well, and Game Pass is still going to have games on it, and the next few years are going to feature a lot of the Microsoft first-party titles coming to the Xbox One as well. Additionally, if you look at the PlayStation 4 side of things, that one's starting to wane a bit because they're going gung-ho on the PlayStation 5, but there are still plenty of third-party games coming out that will hold you over until at least a year from now. And so between Cyberpunk and Assassin's Creed Valhalla and this year's Call of Duty, you don't really have to buy a new console if you don't want to. And I think that this is just another check on the list of reasons not to jump on board on day one for those that are more accustomed to looking at capabilities and at frames per second rather than the experiences that are being offered. Now, for people that are super into the games themselves, Rift Apart's a must-play because, again, it's Ratchet Clank. That's a big deal. Continuation of the 2013 game. It is a resurgence in a way, and of course it is from Insomniac. It's a major potential console seller. On top of that, you have Miles Morales. On the Xbox One side of things, Game Pass is getting tons of games. The Series X is going to be the most powerful console on the market, and of course Halo Infinite is coming next year, so there are reasons to get both. But again, these headlines are a little bit worrisome. However, you could be getting more on the PlayStation because Sony says it is still open to developer buyouts to grow PlayStation studios. In the firm's latest corporate report released on Friday, it emphasized the importance of first-party titles for the future growth of the games business. Quote, in addition to improving the personnel and work environment in its own studios, Sony Interactive Entertainment continues to invest in or acquire firms with abundant creativity and cutting-edge technologies to build up worldwide studios, an association of first-party title production studios, it said. As of May 31st, 2020, WWS owns 14 studios and has become one of the world's leading game developer networks. With hit series like The Last of Us, God of War, and Uncharted, it is a strong engine for content IP production. PlayStation's latest purchase was the acquisition of Spider-Man studio Insomniac Games in August 2019, following a 20-year relationship with the studio with a one-night stand with Microsoft to make Sunset Overdrive. But following that buyout, a key exec suggested that Sony Interactive Entertainment was open to further acquisitions as it prepared to launch the PlayStation 5. During Sony's second quarter earnings call in October 2019, senior EVP and CFO Hiroki Totoki implied the company could look to grow PlayStation Worldwide Studios, which consist of 14 development houses across the US, Europe, and Japan, with further acquisitions. Of course, with the aim of strengthening these, in August we announced the acquisition of Insomniac Games, the game developer for Marvel's Spider-Man, which sold 13.2 million units worldwide. Through this acquisition, Insomniac Games will become Sony Interactive Entertainment's 14th studio and will contribute to the further enhancement of our first-party software development organization. Going forward, Totoki added, we will continue to pursue growth investment opportunities that will enhance our own content IP. This is very important, and this is something that Microsoft needs to heavily take notes from, and they have. We see the growth of Xbox game studios, but the reason the PlayStation is leading is not because they are the most powerful hardware on the market. It's because they have really, really good games. The PlayStation lineup is top tier. I mean, as the saying goes, if you are a hardcore gamer, if you will, you really only need two things, a PC and a PlayStation, because on PC you can get most third-party games running their best, and on PS4 you get all of these beautiful exclusives. And so it really is reassuring to see the PlayStation is beefing up their content, because as strong as it is today, it can only get stronger. And PlayStation is continuing to be an industry leader when it comes to experiences that are unlike any other. And that's something that I think PlayStation fans are going to love. And it's something that somebody like me who wants to see all platforms succeed, wants other people to replicate, specifically Phil Spencer, Major Nelson, and the team behind the scenes at Xbox, which they have been, again, expanding the Xbox Game Studios brand, tons of new family members in that little group, but ultimately PlayStation continues to make the right purchases at the right time to make the right games. That really is what it comes down to. So we will see how the future continues to grow and evolve in terms of Sony and PlayStation, but it looks like you could be getting more of their games on PC. Sony confirms it will explore more ports of PlayStation exclusives to PC. In its latest corporate report published on Friday, the company said its games division would continue to aim to increase active users and playtime, enhancing network services and reinforcing content IP. It added, targeted outcomes include growth in active users, strong retention, and a shorter cash conversion cycle from which expanded cash flow can be expected. We will explore expanding our first-party titles to the PC platform in order to promote further growth in our profitability. As well as Horizon, former PlayStation 4 exclusives Death Stranding and Detroit Become Human also released for PC this summer after their exclusivity deals had expired. Mark Healy, a co-founder of Sony-owned studio Media Molecule, told VGC earlier this year that a PC version of Dreams is not currently in development, but that it would be a great idea to release one in the future. However, Sony's head of worldwide studios, Herman Hulse, suggested on PlayStation Blog in March that PC ports of PlayStation exclusives would remain an exception. Quote, and to maybe put a few minds at ease, releasing one first-party AAA title to PC does not necessarily mean that every game will now come to PC, he said. In my mind, Horizon Zero Dawn was just a great fit in this particular instance. We don't have plans for day-and-date PC releases, and we remain 100% committed to dedicated hardware. So, this is something that is good news for the PC players out there that don't mind waiting, but I think it really confirms that Sony sees these recent releases on PC as having paid off. You have, again, Death Stranding, Detroit Become Human, and Horizon Zero Dawn all making their way to PC, and all relatively successful. Horizon Zero Dawn, not as much as I think people and Sony probably expected. Death Stranding did very well, and Detroit Become Human also did pretty well considering its pedigree. But I think this is the natural next step because of the competition. Microsoft, again, is a software company that is Windows. They understand PC gaming in a very big way, and so they look to PC as kind of their playground. And Sony is stepping into that court, and they're releasing some of their biggest games. And I think that you won't, as Herman Hull says, see all of the games released on PC, but I think more of them will be coming in the future because, again, it's free real estate. You release a game on PC, and boom, people are playing it. That's just how it goes, especially one that they have not had access to. And I think that's probably the direction they're going to be going in. You could see, let's say, a game come out in fall 2020, and you might see it on PC released in 2021 or 2022, maybe even later than that. But ultimately, it's just going to be another wave of success because Whenever a game works its way into the news cycle as something that is new and exciting, it sees a boost across the board. So whenever Horizon Zero Dawn came out on PC, I guarantee you there was an uptick on sales of the Complete Edition on the PlayStation 4. That's just how it goes. Death Stranding probably experienced something similar, although the release cycle was a bit shorter, so it's harder to define where the original sales ended and the PC release boost kicked in, but I think that's probably also the case. And so ultimately there really is no negative because you're just expanding your horizons, no pun intended, and if you do end up releasing it on both the console and on PC at different times, it just benefits the entire game overall. So Sony is making its way into the PC space even more, but to round out today's show, Lord of the Rings Gollum is coming to current and next-gen consoles. Daedalic Entertainment, I believe I said that correctly, the team behind Lord of the Rings Gollum, has confirmed the upcoming action-adventure will release on current-gen systems, as well as PS5 and Xbox Series X in late 2021. As part of a gameplay teaser of Lord of the Rings Gollum, project manager Sadie Haberstron, I believe I said that incorrectly, but hey, keep going with it, confirmed that the new game was not just earmarked for early adopters of next-gen consoles, but will also be coming to Nintendo Switch, PC, PS4, and Xbox One. And of course, there's the Gamescom gameplay trailer from Games Radar down below if you do want to check that out. Following the release of those interesting screenshots back in May, we were recently treated to the first trailer of Lord of the Rings Gollum, the upcoming title, and as Emma encapsulated for us earlier this week at Eurogamer, the game will include a series of levels and hubs plus a mixture of open levels and more linear missions where players are presented with a choice of alternative routes. Lord of the Rings Gollum is set to release sometime in 2021 on Nintendo Switch, PC, PS5, PS4, Xbox Series X, and Xbox One. I just wanted to update you guys that this is one of those big games that people kind of assumed was going to be a next-gen title, but no, it is indeed coming to everything, including the Nintendo Switch. Interested to see how this one comes out, but I will say, it's going to be difficult for people that are fans of Lord of the Rings, even casual fans, to look to this and not compare it directly to Shadow of War or Shadow of Mordor, because those Lord of the Rings games are top tier. And so this one, I don't know if it's going to hit that, but it's not really trying to hit that. It'll be an interesting little piece of news to follow, but I am looking forward to seeing what you guys think about the game when it comes out next year. However, that wraps up today's episode of the Jampack Report. If you enjoyed this one, drop me a like down below, and of course, if you are brand new here, subscribe and keep yourself up to date. I'll be back tomorrow with an episode of The Drop, but until then, you guys have a fantastic one. I'll talk to you soon, and peace.